All right, perfect. So, welcome. Thank you guys for coming to my Lunch and Learn. Today's topic is holistic mental health. If you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Erica Steele. I am a holistic doctor in family practice. A little bit about me, my education. I have a lower level degree in psychology. I have a bachelor's of science in alternative medicine. I have a bachelor's of science in natural healthcare sciences, one doctorate in natural medicine, one doctorate in naturopathy. I have a master's in public health with a concentration in complementary alternative medicine. I'm training genetics and methyl genetics. I'm certified in functional integrative medicine, and I'm a current PhD student for applied psychophysiology. So what does all of that mean? I'm highly trained in how the mind, the body, and the physiology all work together, how the body functions, and the mind, the emotions, and pretty much all things. I like to say just humans, right? Like how humans work and what they do to heal and how to help them heal. So that's my educational background. I personally, I've been in the holistic lifestyle for over 30 years. I raised my child like that. My significant other lives like that as well. We all have a very natural and holistic lifestyle. Now, I've had my own impact with mental health with my family. If you guys have um, uh, seen any of my things before, you'll know that my family has struggled with mental illness, specifically schizophrenia and also schizoaffective disorders. Bipolar, DID, borderline personalities, things like that. And so fortunately for me, I was very proactive instead of reactive with my health because I did not want to become either a statistic or just become kind of, just be powerless over my genetics or powerless over my health. So I decided to really educate myself deeply into not just the mental aspects of it, but the emotional aspects of it, the physical aspects of it, and then took it even a step further into the biochemistry and genetic and even spiritual implications of those particular conditions, which I find absolutely fascinating. All right. So, what is holistic mental health? So, it has probably many different definitions. And so, I'll just kind of keep it simple. Really, a lot of times people will say, "Oh, it's the mind, the body, and the spirit." And I feel like that is such a limited view. Yes, it is the mind, so we're good there. Yes, it is the body, it's good there. And yes, it is the spirit, your connection with source, creator, whoever you want to call that entity greater than self. But I think also too, there's a role of your personal relationships. I think that impacts things. I think your connection to community and people outside of yourself. I think that impacts that as well. I also think, ancestral components and genetics play a role, not a complete role, but do play a role. So I think that I want to expand that out where it's more broad and it's not as narrow. So not just the body, mind, and spirit, but really, the physical health, the environmental health, the mental, the emotional, and I separate the two. So the mind is your conscious mind, subconscious mind, and then your emotions are your response to your thoughts, your subconscious and your conscious thoughts and awareness. So emotions and emotional body is a separate entity. And then that feeds into your spiritual connection, because now all of a sudden, if you trust your emotions and you're more in communion with your emotions, now you're more intuitive. You're able to trust yourself more. You're able to, listen more, hear more. And then, of course, expanding that even further, I have a Native American background. So I also look at lineage and I look at ancestors as well, and how they communicate and work with us, not from a negative force kind of methodology, like it's sometimes seen in the Western culture. With the indigenous and with Native people, we have a very a lot of reverence for our ancestors. So why are we going to work with the whole person? Like, that's a lot of work. When people come in, they're like, oh my gosh, like, how are we going to get to all that? And there's an order that we do, or at least I do, and I've developed to really make it easy, because we want to fight overwhelm, right? We don't want to trigger that fear response, and then nothing begins to happen, and people are immobilized, because fear can create multiple reactions: fight, flight, or freeze, or even fawn. And so when we look at the whole person, we're able to really get to the root cause faster, in a more organized way. So I would say, like, people come into my office and they dump their lives on my desk, and it's my job to organize it step by step, and I approach it in that manner. I think from the patient perspective, sometimes it can seem too slow. I think because we're very heightened, especially in Western culture, where we're very fast paced, go go go. I go to the doctor, I get a pill, that pill fixes it, and I can go back to my life. And so I really work to help people re-regulate their nervous system. And as we re-regulate their nervous system, what we do is we teach them behaviorally how to calm down, how to be at ease, how to be still, how to be present, how to be mindful, which we'll talk more about a little later on. And so it is my role as the provider to hold the space for the patient, and also to guide them and be a leader, which means that you have to stand in non-agreement with people. So what I mean by that is that, people have certain agreements that they've made with themselves. Either they've had certain traumas in their life, or they have, ancestral or behavioral patterns that have been passed down, or methods that they have created in order to survive life. And so those methods often have limitations to them. And many times at a certain point, they come up against resistance, and there'll be a manifestation either of a disease process, or relationship woe, or financial, etc. And so they come in and they seek help, but because it's a different worldview from what they're used to, the tendency is to be triggered, right? That's just a fear response, and then double down almost, and then react. So I kind of learned this early on. I didn't understand it, because I like, what did I say? And I'm a very direct human being. My parents are very direct, at least my mother is, and I really don't know how else to communicate other than in a direct way. Now, there's ways to be gentle and loving and kind with it, but also too, when you're dealing with, mental, emotional, spiritual energies, things like that, sometimes you just have to say it how it is. And so my mother would say, the truth will first piss you off, but then it will set you free. And so typically anger is a lot of times the first reaction, and then a person gets to choose whether they want to move forward with their health, or they want to stay stuck and stagnant. And so we have to, as providers, stand in non-agreement to that, because I see the person as already healed, whether they heal here, or they choose to heal somewhere else. The bottom line is they will heal eventually. And so it's my role, my duty at that time, to stand for their ultimate healing. One of the areas that really fascinated me, obviously with my family background, was the role of genetics and epigenetics. So genetics is it's all the genetic SNPs and the codes and things like that make us up in our DNA. Epigenetics is the environment that we put those genes in. And so we've learned that genetics accounts for less than 30%. The rest is environmentally driven, what we put the genes in. Specifically, when we're looking at mental health, there's a few markers that we look at. These are not an exhaustive list of markers, but we look at COMT, MAO, and DHFR. DHFR helps with the conversion of tyrosine, tryptophan to serotonin and dopamine. So if a person is in dopamine catabolism, they're a little more manic-y. If they're in serotonin catabolism, they're going to be a little bit more on the depressive side. People can oscillate from manic to depressive back and forth, and it can be because of that DHFR genetic variation, but it can also be other things like lead exposure or chemical exposure like food dyes, additives, colors, gut microbiology, lack of healthy bacteria that then doesn't generate enough of the neurotransmitters in the brain to help the body heal, nutrient and nutrient deficiencies. MAO and COMT are often the genetic markers that we see in things like Parkinson's or dementia or Alzheimer's, those types of memory-related diseases. Now, they also have a little bit more of like agitation to them. So people that as they age, they start getting a little kind of ornery. Oftentimes you'll see that they have that COMT MAO variation. And this is based off of my own observation, not necessarily a scientific study. Obviously the things that I mentioned about the genetics and the biochemical stuff, that's scientifically proven. But in terms of my connection to genetics and behavior, these are my own observations from clinical practice. And so I have a very deep love and connection to genetics and epigenetics, and I've studied it for a long time. All right, let's see. All right, so let's start with, now that we've got some of that background out of the way, and there'll be a time at the end to ask questions, so feel free. Let's look at nurturing the mind. So we have an intention, right? So the people that were here, you have an intention to, get well or learn or, for friend or family or whatnot. And so now we're going to take that intention into a mental practice. So what does that mean mentally? So we're going to get present, fully present. So many of us are distracted. And so when we talk about mindfulness and mindfulness practices, which have been heavily researched, that is the practice of being present. When you're in the past, you tend to be depressed or sometimes even ruminating. When you're in the future, you tend to be anxious, fearful, worry, hypervigilant, waiting for the other shoe to drop sort of thing. And so, the past is already done. There's nothing we can do. The future is never going to come. And so all we really have is the present moment. I think when I started to really work on healing these aspects, my mind was very creative and very busy, and it would constantly be thinking about all the different things either I'd have to do or, worries I had or whatever. And so part of the practice for me of becoming mindful was I would just go, everything is in perfect order, regardless of appearances, whether I believe this or not. And I would also state things like, okay, what am I doing right now? I'm sitting down, I'm in the chair, I'm talking on my class, those kinds of things I would have to continue to reinforce, especially when I was driving, because the tendency is just your mind to drift off into some crazy places. So we want to put the mind on a leash. So now we look at breathing. So now we're talking about the regulation of the nervous system. Many of us are chest breathers, and so we have dysregulated nervous systems. That's going to create anxiety, right? Whereas if we're belly breathing, we're a little bit calmer, we're a little bit more still, we're able to regulate that vagal nerve. Cold pack on the chest also regulates vagal nerve. So if we're in a hypervigilant state, that can definitely help bring us down. Splashing cold water on your face in the morning can also help too. Some say like put it in a bowl, whatnot. I will be right back, 2 seconds. We're done. Okay. I'm making my lunch while we talk. Okay. So now we look at, breath to consciousness, right? So our minds are online, our breath is online, and now we're on full attention because now we actually have the fuel that we need to be fully present. So now we're dropped in, right? Or what is it? Abraham Hicks, tuned in, tapped in, turned on, that kind of thing. I kind of like what she says. Well, that's kind of cool. So yeah, but you're aware, right? And when you're aware consciously, right, you're present to the thoughts that are happening, the emotions that are happening, to all the things that are happening, really more so in here than out here. You're aware of what's out here, but you're more in tuned to actually what is in here. And so, meaning what is in my mind, my body, my spirit, what is actually in my conscious control and my conscious awareness. We're present to our thoughts, right? So we start to hear all little, things that are going on, in our mind, talking. And then we catch those things, right? And we look at patterns. I really like to write these things down. Now, consciousness is a whole topic in and of itself, because there are two parts of the mind: your conscious mind, which is your logic, your voice, your reason, your decision making, and also the subconscious mind, which is your logic, which is your experiences, perceptions, those experiences, beliefs, and core beliefs from the past. So a quick little story about how these things work. So I dated this guy a long time ago. And he's kind of like a real dad energy, not for me, but he had children. And so, and he was really big into being a dad. Like that was a big thing for him. And we had a relationship, and it was long distance. I was in one part of the country and he was another, and we would talk on the phone quite a bit. And at a certain point, he would use this tone, and not in a derogatory way, or, there was no malice, whatever, but he would use this tone, and oh my gosh, it would send me to the moon and the back. Like I would get so upset. And here's the thing, like I learned he was a very sensitive human being. And so I wouldn't react to him. I would kind of hold it to myself, but I would he would say something, it would almost feel like a rocket hit of sorts. And it would almost take my breath away, and I would just breathe. And I'm like, ooh, okay, what was that? Right. I, felt like I got mugged or something, and just by a tone, which was pretty interesting. And so eventually, I would play with that consciousness, because I'm like, what is it about this tone? Right. So there's something out here. So, over time, like he would use the tone, I would my nervous would just one
do you happen
second.
to know the rack number for the statewide?
Yes. Okay, there we go. My nervous system would just go to, 0 to 100. So I present to what's being said. I catch my breath and I just focus on my breathing. And that took like a month just to hear it, be quiet, and focus just on my breath. And then eventually the weirdest thing happened. He used the tone one time, and I went through my practice, and I had started also using an affirmation: I'm safe, because really my nervous system, I felt like I was, like I said, being mugged or something. It's crazy. And so after about a couple months of doing this, one of the times he used the tone, a little voice in the back of my head goes, I'm not an idiot, right? And I go, oh my gosh, isn't that interesting, right? So a little background story. My parents are very brilliant. My dad, very brilliant, right? And I was always trying to prove to my dad that I was intelligent, right? My dad, a little bit of a perfectionist, and in his jest, he would try to kind of encourage me, kind of thing, like, oh, you got a 98, Erica, why didn't you get 100, whatever. And so what it did was I've developed this complex that me having to prove I'm not an idiot. So his kind of, dad energy, if you will, not towards me, but to his children, really triggered that in me. And so once I discovered what that subconscious belief was, his tone never triggered me again. So that's the power of conscious awareness. Most of us, we're not present and observe. Instead, we just react, right? Somebody says something to us, or whatever, or does something, and then we're like on attack, where it's like Hunger Games, and so we want to really practice that pause, get conscious, and take radical responsibility for our own health and well-being. That is really key to our discovery for our mental health. And so we definitely want to be present to that. Hold on one second. I think we're good there. I just want to make sure that we're mindful of the, okay. I think I had finished that last slide. I actually hit the little thing on accident. Okay. I think the last thing on that slide, I don't know if I can go back. Let me see. I don't know if it'll let me go back. I don't know how to go back. Let me see what the, hold on one split second for me. Yeah, I have my little cheat sheet there. I don't remember what the last part of the slide was, but when we're dealing with our conscious awareness, right, our presence, then it starts really connecting us deeper into our bodies and what our bodies are telling us, right? So many of us are very disconnected from our bodies. We're not embodied, meaning that we're over here, right? So our thoughts are over here, our emotions are over here, and our bodies are over here. So we're very disconnected. And the brain does that too. It kind of, when we've been through traumas, right, it's almost like little shards in the brain, like little sections where, we check out, we, go to different places, etc. And so part of the healing is integration, right? We talk about that a lot, integration and also embodiment. So putting our minds and our emotions and our physical body back online, right? Because our thoughts create emotions, and then our emotions create our actions, and our actions create our behaviors and habits and lifestyles and all the things. And so our lifestyle is dependent upon our mental and our emotional well-being, and our physical health is also dependent, or it creates our mental and our emotional state. There is a gut-brain connection. So in the beginning, when we're, just a little zygote and all these little clumps of cells going on, they're eventually it breaks off, and there's a gut, and then there's a brain, and they're very interconnected. The same microorganisms and things like that are found in the gut can also be found in the brain, and also create the neurotransmitters in the brain. So when we care for our bodies and our mental health, the first thing is getting the diet online. So that's, no artificial dyes, colors, things like that. Colors have very neuroreactive components. Salicylates can also be those things like apples and things like that. That's another chemical. Protein is very important because of the amino acids. All different types of proteins, but I would say your lean protein sources. I would not do your higher fat protein sources. So leaner choices are chicken breast, turkey breast, white fish, some legumes like your black beans, kidney beans, and lentils. Those can all be, and food is a very diverse topic, and we can talk about that at a later class because there's a lot of debate about what is good and what's not good, et cetera, et cetera. And I really have learned from practicing on my own body to recognize blood sugar stabilization is very important. So we want to make sure that we're eating enough protein and we're keeping our fats low. And with that being said, making sure we're digesting properly. So if you're not breaking down your proteins, you're not able to get amino acids, then you're creating dysbiosis, which is an imbalance in gut microbiology within the GI tract, because those proteins are going undigested. Making sure that the liver can be fully supported with enough nutrition on it. And then B complexes are so important, as well as aminos like methionine, antioxidants as glutathione. Sleep is incredibly important, making sure that you get restful sleep. Some people are hypervigilant, meaning that they have difficulty sleeping. So there's two distinctions of falling asleep versus staying asleep. And so if people have difficulty falling asleep because of rumination, things like that, a lot of times doing things like magnesium can help, or GABA can help, as long as there's no medication on board. And also just journaling before bed to just dump everything out of your brain, and then staying asleep. Sometimes, that can actually be a liver issue, believe it or not. If you wake up, that 3 to 4 kind of point of, or even like the 1 to 2 point kidney and liver function, that can let us know that those organs are toxic in the Chinese time clock. So that's pretty fascinating too. Physical movement, moving your body, getting that epinephrine, norepinephrine, and dopamine kind of moving as we're in all those chemicals moving in the body can really be helpful for ensuring that you have a good mental health. So in terms of herb, it's not an herb. So I wouldn't recommend typically herbs. I did magnesium and GABA. GABA is actually a amino acid, I believe. And it's created in the brain, or excuse me, in the gut by lactobacillus. So it's created by a gut microbiology within a probiotic, pretty much in the digestive tract. So GABA, GABA, is what I recommended, and that can help kind of downregulate somebody prior to sleep very gently, safely. Again, medications, so be mindful of that. All right, so there's other things in the mental health space that we need to look at, that this is really the holistic side of things, right? So we look at our relationships. If you have unhealthy, toxic relationships for whatever reason, meaning that you have unhealthy boundaries, right? So unhealthy boundaries can come from a negative self-concept. And so I didn't think we talked about self-concept. Maybe that was on the other slide, but self-concept is how you see yourself in the world and how you see yourself in relationship to other things in your life. So if I believe in my subconscious, right, that I, like in my example, I'm an idiot, right? That was in my subconscious mind. And so I'm walking around having to prove to everybody that I'm not an idiot. So that's probably partially why I have 6 degrees in my field, is because I wanted to prove to myself, oh, I'm really smart. Look at me go, kind of thing. And so when we want to heal ourselves, we want to start looking at our self-concept and how we see ourselves in the world. And as we begin to self-evaluate and self-reflect, and we begin to get conscious and present to our limiting beliefs about ourselves, all those little things like I'm fat, or I'm this, or I'm that, or I'm a bad mom, or whatever, all the things that we can self-deprecate ourselves with, those little communications are almost those tiny little paper cuts that we want to shift, right? I find that a beautiful practice I've been working with lately is working with my inner child, and it's so powerful because even if our adult self has evolved and all the things, right, our inner child can be very damaged and wounded by things that have happened in the past and have created stories based off of experiences, perceptions, those experiences, beliefs, and core beliefs. And so it's important to work on relationship with self first and learn to love your own company, and learn to be able to be practiced in silence and stillness and just being aware. So once we work on that relationship with self, then we can start evaluating. There's a practice that I recommend my patients to do, is outlining their core values, right? So, you can Google core values online, and, there's like hundreds of them, and you can print little PDF sheets out and that kind of thing, and then narrow it down. And this takes like a few weeks of time, actually, if you're really present to it, because you want to keep going to it and back to it, etc. And so you narrow it down, and you narrow it down to like 10, you go from 100 to like 10, and then you narrow it down to like 5. And then, I settled on 4. The 4 were my core values. And then I took my relationships and I put them up against this mirror of my core values. And I go, okay, does this person match? Does this person match? Does this person match? Not that I didn't love them as human beings, but if they weren't structured for me, which is one of my core values, because of the trauma I've experienced in my life, I need structure to help keep my nervous system, balanced. I don't do well with the free fall up and down. I don't do well with fluid movement. And even though I've worked a lot on my sense of control, and I've been able to release and allow and surrender more, I still need to know certain things, right? So I need to know that a class is going to start at a certain time and end at a certain time, kind of thing, a structure, so I can plan the rest of my day, right? Otherwise, it's just kind of this free float. And because I'm sometimes in very new agey kind of communities at times, just because of the work that I do and being a doctor and people not trusting doctors these days, I tend to attract sometimes kind of these free floaty people. And so if they don't match that structure, if that's not a value to them, then I know the relationship won't work. And not that they're a bad person, and not that I don't love them and support them and all the things, but that structure is what helps my nervous system stay safe and stay at ease. There is also connection with higher power. So once you start to really cleanse, if you will, all the emotional baggage from the past, your intuition goes way up, your discernment goes way up. You're able to trust yourself more. You don't have to go on so many wild rides with people, because you can pick it out pretty quick. You can tell kind of who's who and what's what, and you don't question it. As I have to hire contractors and people for my practice, I went through so many iterations of this, learning to trust and seeing, but then ignoring, right? Seeing and then letting the mind go, oh, well, but da 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 da, but now I'm more integrated. And so now it's like, no, I see it, nah, I ain't into it. Even if it's a little kind of click, I'm like, I ain't doing it. Ancestral trauma is also, again, an area that I really, really love. And so looking at the impacts of colonization, looking at the impacts of, different famines and wars and the Depression and slavery and genocide and, all of the different impacts of our lineages. I am a very diverse lineage. I'm English, Irish, Scottish, Native, 3 parts Native actually, and African, and a little bit of Arab in there. So, I've been able to really see from multiple angles and multiple perspectives, which has been incredible to kind of trace these lineages back and be able to see not just from one perspective, but see from all perspectives, which has just been powerful. And understanding how the traumas have been passed down and how that's impacted our generation. And not only accepting that, but also giving back to my line what is not mine, and only taking forth what I choose to take. So I'm trained in family constellation, which is a powerful, it's like a combination of energy work and psychotherapy. And it's just like such a beautiful practice to help people heal, kind of similar to like Gestalt or what do you call it? Like where they act things out and stuff. Yeah, I don't use the cacao that much for that practice. So somebody said the raw cacao powder tea is very good for instant sleeping, and it's relaxing your, I think that's brain. Yeah, so a little word about herbs and things like that. I like to get to the root cause first, before I just throw things at the problem. So I like to actually understand. My practice is very data driven. So rather than practicing alternative medicine where we just go, oh, I have this problem and let me, look in a book and, find this herb or Google this, and let me take something for this, right? I look at data, number one, and also I look at what the physiology is, meaning the function of the body, and what the mechanisms of action are in biochemistry, because I'm highly trained in biochemistry. So different herbs and things like that, they have different innervations. with certain medications and things like that. So that's why I don't go directly for those things first. I will start nutritional. So I start food first, and then I'll start from there, food and food derivatives, right? So cacao powder would be a food derivative. And then from there, I'll go homeopathic, which is very gentle, or if they have strong European ancestry, I'll go homeopathic pretty early on, or they've been through a lot of trauma, or they have a lot of emotional uh, things that have not been healed. And then also too, if they're more like South American or indigenous, we'll go herbal, but I save that because herbal is it's very heavy on the body. So just so we're aware of that. Medication intervention. So this kind of goes into what I was saying here with medications. So medications, there's nothing wrong with using a pharmacological agent. Let me say that. So a lot of people, they're like, oh, pharmaceuticals are evil and all the things, right? So here's my view on pharmaceuticals. They are a stabilizer, right? So they stabilize you when you are destable. So when we're dealing with mental health issues, sometimes we need to use a pharmacological agent to stabilize the system. And we also have to make sure that on top of that, we are mindful of the things that we're taking, and mindful of doing the work to help us heal. So it's not just a plug and play. It's not just oh, we're going to throw that out there and that's it. We want to make sure that we're using even medications in a holistic way. I'm a very integrative provider. So it's not us against them. I work with medical doctors all the time. They refer patients to me, or refer patients to them. It's not a big deal. It's just knowing when to use what and for when. Pharmacological agents are just another modality like anything else, like breath work and that kind of thing. All right. Okay, so as we're kind of winding down in our time, we want to make this a practice. So, and what is this, right? We want to create holistic mental health as a practice. So if you saw me WTKR, I talked about, starting the day and ending your day as a practice. So starting the day with, things like 5 things you want to do for yourself. So like breath work or meditation or yoga or journaling or whatever, those kinds of things, just to set the tone and the intention of your day, right? And then from there, you're creating your day, rather than being at the effect of your day. So if you're at the effect of your day, you're just kind of bumbling along and things are just happening, right? And then at the end of the day, we want to recap the day. So we want to summarize the day, what we've done, what we haven't done, what we've gotten done, what we need to get done, etc. And then that helps us to bookend our day. So beginning the day and ending the day is a good, and it's a daily practice. So some days you're going to fall off, some days you're going to forget, and also it's a moving target. So every day may be a little bit different, and that's okay. It's really important to be able to be flowing and be at ease. And so not necessarily, one or the other. So, right. So in summary, I think taking your inventory is key. And so meaning that you want to assess your mental health, right? So are you ruminating? Are you overthinking? Or do you have, emotional, like, are you emotionally reactive? Are you angry a lot of the time? Are you frustrated? Are you shut down? Are you depressed? Like really observing, and maybe even asking some of your close friends and family, just in terms of what they see. That can be a very vulnerable experience, of course. So you definitely want to do it with people you trust. So saying things like, asking like, what are 5 qualities, traits that you love about me? And what are 5 qualities qualities and traits that, I think I can work on, and really allowing yourself to see yourself. That's I think the most difficult thing that we struggle with at times as human beings, is to be able to see ourselves. And then we want to see the impact of all the things that we're doing. So the impact in terms of like, okay, so me holding on to this depression is inhibiting my motivation, or me not taking care of my physical health is leading to my mental and emotional state being impaired, or not being able to, get up in the morning is, impacting my kids, or whatever, right? I'm just throwing stuff out there. And then you want to choose to break the cycle. I had an amazing teaching yesterday with Sherry Salata and the support system. If you don't know who Sherry Salata is, she is the former executive producer of Oprah. And she has developed what we call the support system for women, over 40. Of course, if you're under 40 as a woman, you're welcome to. But I'm a resident professor slash doctor for them. And we talked about choice and making a decision to heal and choosing to break the cycle. And so, we can take the inventory and see what's going on. We can see the impact on ourselves and others. But if we don't make a choice to shift, change, and heal, nothing's going to happen. And sometimes that can take a long time, from inventory to cycle breaking. And sometimes we have to be, what do they call it? Sick and tired of being sick and tired. We have to get to the point where we've had enough. Once you get to that breaking point, then you want to make a plan. And that's what I help people with, is making a plan of action. Of course, you can make a plan yourself, but I find that having some sort of outside influence is really helpful, because they are able to see perspective, like therapists, counselor, etc. The other thing is that there's a natural order to which the body heals. And so we start with things like, mindset. We get our mindset, we work on our self-concept, we get that solidified. So it makes it easier. We don't just jump into, eating a whole bunch of foods and taking a whole bunch of things, because that isn't going to actually heal the problem. That's just going to mask it and cover up, even if it's a natural thing. So part of my philosophy and practice, I don't over test, even though I'm highly trained in clinical biochemistry. I don't run every lab test under the sun on patients. And I also don't give patients a lot of supplements and a lot of things external. I use it as a tool. I use it as medicine. I don't use it as a replacement for anything. And I definitely don't load people up with stuff, because again, those mechanisms of action are very important. And understanding biochemistry, which is how the body actually heals, is very important to have the science behind it, not just medicate it, even with a natural thing, right? Okay, so now we're at question and answer time. Hold on one second for me. So I'm just going to give you all a few moments to put your questions in the chat. All right. Let's see. Can you recommend any good books or resources for a diet that benefits mental health? Okay, so I don't, let me say this. I don't believe in diets, okay? Meaning like everybody needs to be a vegan, everybody needs to be keto, everybody needs to be blah, blah, blah. What I recommend is knowing your macros, okay? So your macros are your proteins, your fats, your carbs. So you can Google a macronutrient calculator, right? And so if you Google that and you plug in your information, like your height, your weight, your if your activity level, if you need to lose weight, whatever, it'll give you what your macros are. Normally, if you need to maintain weight, it's going to be a 40-40-20 split. 40% carb, 40% protein, and 20% fats. And so that we want to keep the protein stable because it helps the amino acids. So I'm more macronutrient based than diet based. I'm more of learning within the compounds, like, okay, learning what's a protein, what's a fat, what's a carb, and then eating based off of that rather than a diet per se. In terms of other like resources, in any mental health issues, I do like the Feingold diet. Feingold is spelled Feingold. That's especially if there's any neurodivergence, like ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder, because that talks about taking out the salicylates and the food dyes, additives, and colors. So you can Google that. They'll have like booklets online. So those would be my top things. I would say understanding nutrition and not getting pigeonholed to a specific diet. Because here's what happens when you get pigeonholed to a specific diet and you have to live your life, i.e. travel, etc. Like I was raised a vegetarian, I was a vegan, I was a raw foodist. I moved to Virginia, where that's not prevalent at all. Now it's a little bit more, but at the time it wasn't, and it was very difficult to eat. The food sources were not good. So I really had to learn, a lot about nutrition to be able to understand how to navigate. So that's also why I don't put people on diets. And as I began to learn more about biochemistry and got specialized in that, I began to understand, it's more based off your biochemistry than like some philosophical diet. Obviously, some people have, ethical, limitations where they're like, they love animals, things like that. All right. Will we get a recorded version of today's event? So it's live streamed on YouTube, my YouTube channel, Holistic Practice. You just Google Dr. Erica Steele. I've got all the letters by my name, and it's on our YouTube channel. And so it'll be there. And if I'm really on my game, I'll send an email out, but I can't make any promises right now. I got so much going on. Can you speak more on ancestry and mental health traits? Okay. So, let's see, ancestry and mental health traits, treatment, etc. Okay, so, all right. I am trained to read the raw data of somebody's ancestral file. So some people may use things like 23andMe or ancestry.com. And you know how like you'll get kind of a little cheeky report from them, like, oh, do you, does, I don't know. They have like some of the silliest things that they evaluate for. Anyway, I actually am trained to take that raw data and process it and then evaluate it and that's how it was in the beginning of 23andMe, but this is not a 23andMe topic, so I'm not going to go into the iterations and how they came to be and all the things and decisions they made against providers early on, and their business strategy. But pretty much, if you have one of those, we can take those and evaluate it. If you're not comfortable with having either of those companies have your DNA information for whatever reason, then we do have third-party independent labs that we work with that we can test the ancestry. So first thing is getting your raw data. That's the first piece. And then we have to evaluate the raw data. So genetics is just one piece of it. Once you know your genetics, then we can trace back, where the lines are. And then with family constellation, like I said, that's an amazing, powerful tool. And it comes up, it comes up in consultation. Like if a person needs to heal on that level, it's going to come up always. It's not, sometimes it takes a little bit of time. Like I'll give you an example. I have a case right now which were really close to a huge breakthrough in her case. So she came in with a lot of mental health issues, and they were kind of batting around the idea that it may be schizophrenia, memory, all kinds of things, right? They were kind of, they were doing some testing, that kind of thing. Well, I worked with her on her diet. sometimes it's very challenging to get the diet online with people with mental health kind of issues. So we use some biofeedback eventually. And the biofeedback allowed for us to be able to see, allow us to get to the root cause. I have an Evox machine that actually can assess the subconscious mind and help pull things out. And so what happened is when she was really young, like we're talking really young in school, her mother died. Okay. So with that missing, that trauma, she never quite recovered from it. So in family constellation, it is believed that if there's a missing in the line, that sometimes it can spawn things like schizophrenia to occur in the line, right? And so we worked through that process, and we gave her mother a place, and we healed that abandonment wound, and we worked with her on her diet, and we worked with her on her supplement regimen, and we gave her more emotional coping tools. And now she's at the point of she's got one foot in, still a little bit in her past life, and one foot in the future. Now she's starting to get motivated again to want to go back to work, right? And that's a huge step for this particular human being. So that's how sometimes the ancestral can impact, and also some treatment methodology. I always meet people where they're at, and it's unique to the human being. That's some of the advantage of having as much education as I do. There's not one little piece that I can target. There's many, many pieces. And so if one aspect is not working, I'm going to switch to another. If that aspect's not working, I'm going to switch to another. I take over 350 data points on all of my patients. So I take subjective data, which is what the patient tells me. And we also take objective data, which is what we can assess. And we can measure even the subjective data. So I create almost like a little controlled experiment around the patient. I educate them on what the data means, coach them around practically what they need to do step by step. And then me and my team hold them accountable so that we achieve the results that we want to achieve. Will I provide the slides to the attendees? I can. Again, if I'm like super on my game, I will email them out. I'm currently in the process of moving out of the country and just doing all the things. And so I will send an email to my team. Hopefully they will. We've got a lot of stuff going on with media and stuff like that. So I'll try my best to get the slides emailed out with the link through that channel. So if not, just comment on the YouTube and I can probably attach it or something, figure out something there. That way it's like in my face. All right, cool. Does anybody have any more questions? All right, and it's okay if you do. So yeah, thank you so much. So if you are, I'm like all over the socials, so YouTube and Insta. I've got my practice Instagram, my personal, all the things, Twitter. I mean, just pick a social platform, I'm on it. This is my office number. I do consultations from all over the world. I treat people all over the world. There is a recording on this that's going to be on our YouTube channel. And if you look at our website, holisticfamilypracticeva.com, I'm sure it'll be on there somewhere. So, yeah, so if you are ever interested in me evaluating your case, feel free to look me up, holisticfamilypracticeva.com. My physical practice will be closing at the end of the year because I'm moving overseas. And thank you guys so much for attending. Next month, we're going to be talking about liver health. So please look out for that lunch and learn. We'll talk all about the liver and all about all the things relating to everybody's little livers. And so I'll try to keep our livers healthy and happy and whole. In the meantime, really, for May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So hopefully you learn some strategies and some tools to be proactive instead of reactive for your health. Again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us either on any of my social platforms. That's a great way to get some of your answers, especially if you want it more of a private answer. Obviously, I'm limited because some things I need data to be able to tell you. But if I'm available and able to help, I most certainly will, or lead you to the person that can. Thank you guys so much for attending. I really, mental health is such a really near and dear topic to myself, just because of all of my past experiences. One thing I didn't mention is I had developed post-traumatic stress disorder, complex PTSD at 14 years old. And they told me I was going to be on an SSRI the rest of my life. And I said, that ain't the thing. And so I've healed my post-traumatic stress and obviously learned a lot about the brain and learned a lot about tools to be able to help people. So that's why I'm very in tune to dysregulated nervous systems and what to do about them and ancestral trauma and all the things. So I'd like to give practical as well as more scientific information and kind of put those two together for you guys. Thank you guys so much for attending. I really, really appreciate your attention. And there's so much more that I want to share with you. So definitely keep in touch. Again, next month, we'll talk all about liver health. And if you're interested in scheduling a consultation, feel free to check us out on any of our platforms and any of our websites. We are happy, me and my staff are happy to assist you in your holistic health journey or direct you to someone who can. So, all right, everybody, I am going to end the live and end the class, but thank you guys so much and have an incredible, amazing, beautiful day.